Hello, everyone. For this case study review, I decided to look at Kentucky's decision to consolidate all their community and technical colleges into one comprehensive system of 14 schools with various locations throughout the state. They decided to call this the Kentucky Community and Technical College System. And for the purposes of this presentation, I will hence call it the KCTC system. From our readings, we've gotten to see how aligning our budget planning with our strategic planning is very important for higher education. And this was true for the KCTC system. They wanted to make sure that their schools were accessible so that they were convenient for students from all over the state to attend. They wanted to check the tuition increases, so they wanted to make sure they're level and even across the state, make it affordable for students, and they wanted to make sure the programs that they were offering were relevant to the jobs and positions that would be available for these students once they did finish their programs. And this became the core goals of the strategic planning. And these are actually the core goals from the 2016 to 2020. I couldn't help but look ahead because in the article we saw that a lot of these goals were planned to be completed by the year 2020, which is this year. And so I wanted to look ahead and see, hey, where exactly were they in this process? So from the KCTC system website, I went and I looked and I saw, hey, what were the accomplishments? What are they bragging about? And they're bragging that they serve over 40% of Kentucky's undergraduate students. And that includes 82% of students from a skilled trade workforce, 68% from allied health credentials, and they cost less than half the cost of a four-year college. So they have been able to maintain and cap that cost and keep the tuition rates down. They have 200 short-term certificates, and these certificates have salary ranges that go all the way up to $60,000. So it gets into the relevancy of the program. So we're looking again at those core strategic plans. So they were able to make sure that it was accessible as they reached over 40% of undergraduates. They were able to cap the cost to make it affordable, and they have been able to make it relevant to salaries and positions that are available within the state. And as you can see, a KCTC system graduate earns over $9,000 more than someone who doesn't attend and graduate from college. And from the information in the article, we saw how funding works for higher education in the state of Kentucky. And it kind of goes from the bottom up, where schools give a projection of what they think their costs will be, goes up into the post-secondary educational level, and then up to the state budget level. And at the state budget level, this is your state legislators, and they control all the tax revenue and other revenue of the state to decide where are they going to appropriate funds to. Now, after they decide this is how much we're going to give to post-secondary educational level, then the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education reviews all the requests from different colleges and decides this is how much we're going to give to each level. And part of that determination is then how much money are we going to give to the KCTC system. And then the KCTC system has to look and decide how are we going to distribute that across our 14 different colleges. As I've mentioned, this whole budget development process is highly linked to the strategic plan. So they try to make sure that they're giving money based on, hey, how are these colleges going to achieve the important strategic goals that we have for the system? And when they're making requests through the KCTC system, there needs to be analysis of, how much is this money going to be? Is it going to be on a 2-year basis or on a yearly basis? Because this is important because the Kentucky budget cycle is biennial in nature. So when the legislators get together, they plan on a 2-year budget. Now there are provisions and they do reevaluate on an annual basis, but it's expected that you can project ahead over a 2-year period. They also have capital and current, so they want to make sure that if you do have any capital requests, they do keep that separate from operational costs and academic educational costs. And then there's also recurring costs and then the non-recurring costs. and they also separate them by funding source and the business units or colleges. Now, one of the things we didn't get much information about is exactly how input is given from the colleges to the KCTC system. And the only thing we got from the article was that this was up to the college president. So we don't know if there is a systemized process in place for how do they actually go out and collect the information they use to decide this is how much money or this is the report we want to send to the KCTC system. And after all this gets determined and inputted by the college presidents, then the KCTC system looks at that, their leadership review board looks at that, and they decide, hey, this is how much we're going to give to each school. So some of the successes that they've had is they were able to reduce a lot of the costs of higher education. And they did this by centrally sharing best practices, but also controlling a lot of the costs through economies of scale. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second, but it was central to some of the success that they had. And this helped them to control tuition costs, and it also created a sense of systemness. I know that's not technically a dictionary word, but it does have sense in the business world where you're aligning things together and focusing them on a central goal. I mentioned on the previous slide that they were able to achieve economies of scale, and this was one of the greatest successes that they had because they were able to centralize some of the services like human resources, purchasing, some of these things that would have taken numerous people for each college to achieve. They were able to do it from a central office. And similar to when you go to Sam's Club or Costco and you buy things in bulk, you typically get a lower per item price when you're able to buy things in bulk. So if you're able to buy, say, supplies for an entire system, you should be able to negotiate a better price than each individual school could have on their own. But in this process, I think it did create a lot of challenges for this system. Now, we don't get into many of the failures in this article. They mostly only talk about all the successes they've had in increasing access and getting more students and increasing enrollment. So it looks all positive from the case study review. But I see some challenges in this greater bureaucracy because, especially for budget managers, you've got to really understand how to negotiate in this larger system. So this does create more confusion at times, but definitely more steps and more people you have to try to influence to get things done that you think are important. So if you say we're a budget manager for a academic unit, who would you actually go to see? There wasn't any clear delineation of how this data was collected at each school. As we said, it was up to the college presidents to decide exactly how does that input work for their particular school, and then they pass that along to the higher level of the KCTC system. Now, this is also important for budget managers. You got budget managers because you're limited to only an annual and a biennial review. So if there are things that may come up that are urgent, I'm not sure, how you would direct that through that greater bureaucracy to try to influence some kind of change. Say if there was a need for a program mid-semester and you have to wait until June and you're trying to get something done in December for January because there's a need in your local area. So it does create some challenges, and I think that they would need to find some ways to figure that out. Otherwise, it sounds like a great idea to centralize a lot of these services. This is what many businesses do, and they've been able to achieve cost reductions and been able to maintain that lower level of tuition. So I think there are some challenges there, but I think they've had more successes than they've had failures from what we've read, of course, but also looking ahead and doing a little research online. It looks like the KCTC system is doing quite well and will probably be around for some time in the future. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the discussion board. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.